Recently, a relative of mine who might might be invested in nuclear, he said to me, "You know what? If nuclear wasn't a good idea, why is it that these big tech billionaires are investing in nuclear? I mean, why are they building nuclear power plants if it doesn't make sense? If renewables are really a better option, which, well, they are, well, there's one big reason why they're doing it, and this is it. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching The Electric Viking. Great to have you with us. Now, I'll be doing a series of videos on our YouTube members section about all issues like this and about how you can potentially take advantage of the massive wealth transfer. We're going to see a huge increase in global wealth over the next 10 years. I mean, exponential increase in global wealth. Many experts believe that this will happen. So I'll put a link in the description to our YouTube member page. Sam Altman is the chairman of a company that promotes a brighter future for mankind. Of course, it's not OpenAI that I'm talking about. You would think Sam Altman, who is the CEO of the artificial intelligence company that he co-founded, was meant to be a nonprofit. You'd think it'd be, focusing on, what's going to be better for humanity. However, he also owns a company called Oklo, and they are developing the kind of nuclear power technology that many tech leaders, including Altman himself, say that they will need to fuel future artificial intelligence advancements. Now, obviously, we all know the declining costs of renewables, batteries, solar, and wind, but primarily batteries and solar, is the key reason why now places like Saudi Arabia are installing 24-hour solar and battery plants where, yes, actually grids can run purely on solar and batteries. And the cost of that has never been lower. It continues to go down, which makes them such a great economic idea these days. And that's what really the key reason why Tesla's energy division increased by 50% last year. CATL's sales as well, the largest battery company in the world, sales increased enormously in 2024, along with BYD. The proliferation of electricity-hungry data centers to power our digital lives and increasingly the AI technology that tech giants say is the future now means that energy demand could soon outstrip supply. And that would be a problem for tech companies who are angling for their AI technology to revolutionize almost everything about the way we live and about the way we work. But while tech leaders have pointed to nuclear energy as essential to a climate-friendly future, some industry analysts believe that their investments will truly benefit the wider public, rather than just protecting their own businesses' ability to operate. I think the tech companies are looking out for their own interests, and whether those nuclear vendors are able to sell additional nuclear power plants to the public is another question, said Sharon Squassoni, a research professor at George Washington University who studied nuclear energy and policy. So it's very clear that more energy will need to come from somewhere. Electricity demand from US data centers has grown by 50% since 2020, now accounts for 4% of the country's entire energy consumption. That figure could grow to 9% by 2030. UBS analysts said in a research note earlier this month that it's going to continue after 2030 as well to keep growing. And overall power demand in the United States is expected to grow by 13 to 15% every year until 2030, potentially turning electricity into a scarcer resource, according to JP Morgan analysts. The electricity needs of data centers have also threatened to upend tech giants' sustainability promises. Tech giants have pointed to the benefit of nuclear energy's reliability versus other renewable energy sources such as solar and wind. Now, they're obviously ignoring the fact that nuclear energy is the most expensive form of energy on the planet, and it also takes by far the longest to build. None of these nuclear power plants will be even built by 2030, and while in theory they're needed today. Microsoft, though, in September secured a deal to reopen a reactor on 3 Mile Island, the site of a 1979 partial meltdown in Pennsylvania, aiming to revive a different reactor by 2028, potentially, it hopes, to power its AI ambitions. But remember, Bill Gates and Microsoft, they own a percentage of a nuclear power company. Amazon and Meta have also begun working to lock in deals to secure future nuclear power for their data centers. Data centers operate 24/7 and they need a stable supply of electricity. They can't shut down because the wind is not blowing or the sun is down, said Anna Erickson, a professor at Georgia Tech who studies nuclear engineering. And obviously, she's very much has a sunk cost bias because nuclear is her thing. And obviously, if the wind isn't blowing or the sun is down, then that's where batteries step in. And it's a key reason why the primary source of energy between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. in California, the peak period for demand, is actually coming from batteries, not from nuclear or anything else for that matter. Now, Oklo isn't Altman's only nuclear energy investment. The OpenAI CEO has invested in Halon Energy, a nuclear startup that's using a different kind of technology from Oklo. Facebook co-founder and now Asana CEO Dustin Moskovitz, LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman, and billionaire tech investor Peter Thiel's venture capital firm Mithril have also invested in Halon Energy. And Altman isn't the only tech leader trying to cash in on the push towards nuclear. Separately, TerraPower, which is backed and chaired by Microsoft founder Bill Gates, is in the early phases of building a new nuclear reactor in Wyoming. You can see why it's in Bill Gates' interest and Microsoft's to build a nuclear reactor because it benefits both of them. Google joined a $250 million funding round for nuclear startup TAE Technologies in 2022, and Amazon anchored a $500 million financing round for nuclear startup X Energy in October. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos has also invested in Canadian nuclear startup General Fusion. Can you see how this is a little bit of conflicting interest here? These companies, these tech companies are telling you, yeah, don't listen to renewable energy people. They're not right. Really, nuclear is the only solution. And they're saying this because it will benefit them financially. If you invest in that stock or if that company does well, then they make billions and billions and billions of dollars. As of August, Peter Thiel's venture capital firm, Mithril, owned 5.3% of Oklo's shares, and the billionaire tech investor has reportedly backed other nuclear startups. Tech investor Cathie Wood's ARK Invest also invested in Oklo earlier this year. President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Energy Secretary Chris Wright, chief executive of the fracking company Liberty Energy, also serves on Oklo's board. Now, unfortunately, it appears the swamp is it's everywhere. Donald Trump or otherwise, they're all part of the swamp. Already, lawmakers are lining up to support expanding nuclear power. President Joe Biden in July signed into law the ADVANCE Act, a bill designed to make it easier, cheaper, and faster to permit and build new nuclear reactors that received bipartisan support. They still take about 10 to 15 years to build, though. And during this year's COP28 climate talks, the United States joined more than 20 other countries in pledging to triple global nuclear energy capacity by 2050. Now, it's worth pointing out that France, the most heavily dependent nuclear nation in the world, has recently warned them all and said that actually nuclear is extremely expensive and not the panacea that they believe it is. Some experts see the tech industry's investment in nuclear as crucial for pushing forward an expensive, keyword expensive, but clean energy source that could help combat climate change. Let's face it, these guys who are doing AI right now, they're the ones with the money, right? Erickson said. Megan Wilson, Chief Strategy Officer at General Fusion, told CNN that as we look at the interest by tech companies in nuclear power, what we're seeing is really a symptom of the broad recognition that we need clean, baseload power that is free of both carbon dioxide and methane emissions that's reliable and affordable. Thus, the propagation of the myth, even by experts in the renewable energy industry as well, that renewables can't survive without baseload. Baseload is either wind power or nuclear energy or some sort of fossil fuel source. Now, that is a complete myth. And it's a false notion that renewables can't survive without any of those. In fact, they obviously very well can. 90% of the world lives on the sunbelt. I'll repeat this over and over because people don't seem to have actually gotten this into their heads yet. And we now know from projects that are actually being developed in numerous countries that, yes, in fact, a grid can survive without wind and without nuclear and without coal and without gas. It can survive purely on solar and batteries. If you don't believe me, check out my video on that topic that was out yesterday. Although General Fusion is still in the process of proving its technology works, Wilson added that fusion is expected to be an even safer option than fission because it is combining atoms rather than separating them, and therefore is very hard to start and very easy to stop. Of course, the industry has been talking about nuclear fusion for decades, actually more than decades, for a very long time. Still hasn't happened. In the future, though, the company expects its power plants will have a radiation profile very similar to that of a hospital that uses medical isotopes or has a cancer treatment ward, said Wilson. It's all great. It's all fine. Now, we did hear, to be fair, similar things about nuclear power plants in the past. And it didn't go so well in Japan or Chernobyl either. Some experts have raised concerns about heavy investments in nuclear by the leaders of an industry known for pushing back against regulations that could slow it down, even when it is intended to improve safety. And it's worth pointing out the fact that China has basically given up its nuclear ambitions. That is an unquestioned fact. If anyone tells you otherwise, they're simply lying to you. China set a target in 2018 for nuclear power. And it has given up on those ambitions. It hasn't even hit its 2020 goal, and it's now 2025. When it comes to renewables, it is installing the equivalent of 5 nuclear power plants every single week. And that number is growing. The amount of nuclear power plants it builds out is shrinking. And that's in a country where they will build nuclear power plants at least 50% faster than anywhere else in the world, right? In a country with almost no bureaucracy, with a dictatorship that does what it wants to do when it wants to do it. It still takes more than 5 years, and it turns out the Chinese have decided the juice isn't worth the squeeze. The problem here is that you have these Silicon Valley giants who have the clout, who have the power to get a lot of what they want. And the industry's attitude, first and foremost, is fight any regulation that would interfere with their plans, said Edwin Lyman, Director of Nuclear Power Safety at the Union of Concerned Scientists. I'm very concerned that the safety and security rules that are really essential for protecting the public could take a real beating, Lyman said. A TerraPower spokesperson told CNN, "It's clear that the world needs more carbon-free, reliable power, and advanced nuclear energy has an important role to play in helping both the public and private sectors meet decarbonisation goals in the face of energy demand growing exponentially. Studies show that we will not make our net zero targets without nuclear energy in the mix. Anyone serious about meeting carbon-free targets needs to be planning to integrate nuclear into their energy portfolio." And that's what these big tech wigs are saying. However, it's completely not true. In fact, it's a total lie. Experts have predicted that there is a very high probability, if we simply go on the mathematics of this, not the feelings, the mathematics of the cost of solar and batteries in comparison to the cost of nuclear, that by 2035, 50% of the world's energy generation will come purely from solar. Now, of course, that solar, most of it will need to be backed up by batteries. But solar and batteries combined are actually still a fraction of the cost of nuclear. Even in China, it's 4 times more expensive to get nuclear power than renewable power backed up by batteries. So you can see here, this is all about money. It's not about what is actually saving the planet. That's how they'll frame this. They'll frame this story, we're saving the planet by having clean, renewable nuclear power energy, where actually it's incredibly expensive. Now think about it this way. If the same amount of money was invested to transform the entire global energy system of the entire planet, everything, it was invested and we decided, let's make everything nuclear powered, right? Well, imagine what the costs would be. Whereas if the alternative we took and we said, let's make everything powered by renewables, the cost would be at worst, a minimum of 50% cheaper. Now, here's the other problem. Oxford experts, there's about 50 of them that got together and they said, you know what? The delay is the problem. The delay is going to cost us trillions and trillions of dollars. They put the figure at some insane number. I think it was about $10 trillion that the world are going to lose because we're delaying it. Rather than delaying it, if we just agree on the reality here that renewables are far cheaper, we can get it done very quickly. Oklo was founded in 2013 by 2 MIT graduates, and they say they have developed advanced nuclear reactors to produce abundant, affordable, clean energy at a global scale. Now, I've made many videos on different claims from different nuclear companies, experts over the last 4 years. To be honest, none of those claims have actually proven to be true. As you guys know, I've also made many videos on battery claims. Now, not all of them proved to be true, but at least some of them did, right? See the key difference here. And since I began this channel nearly 4 years ago, the cost of batteries has fallen by around 70%, but the cost of nuclear, it hasn't. It's actually increased. Now, the company's name comes from an interesting myth. They say it was inspired by the old Oklo region in the African country of Gabon, where scientists say Earth's only natural nuclear reactor existed around 2 billion years ago. Don't know if that's true. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Natural nuclear reactor. Okay. I'm assuming no one and nothing lived anywhere near it. Oklo is building so-called fast reactors, though, that it says can create greater power output from less fuel, meaning they're smaller and cheaper, and could recycle used nuclear fuel from other plants. It plans to sell power from those smaller reactors directly to customers such as data center operators, potentially directly on site. Now, keep in mind, even if these end up being real, right, and even if the costs are what Oklo claims they'll be, which I doubt, but even if they are, where exactly will they be built? I can guarantee you nobody wants to live within 50 kilometers or at least within 50 miles of a nuclear power plant. Even if it's claimed to be safe, it's not going to happen. As AI is expected to transform all of the technology we use in the coming decades, and you want something that's reliable and scalable and clean, and fission, nuclear fission, is really well suited to that, Oklo CEO and co-founder Jacob DeWitt said in May. Now, to be honest, if I read you that paragraph and I admitted the fact that he says nuclear fission, it would have sounded like he was talking about solar and wind and batteries, of course. Oklo stock has doubled, though, since it began publicly trading in May and has been boosted by Trump and others following a merger with Altman's special purpose acquisition company, SPAC. You all know about SPACs and the many billions of dollars that have been lost from investors who have gullibly invested in those companies. LC Acquisition Group was the company involved in this reverse merger. That strong stock performance is coming as AI growth is expected to drive up demand for nuclear power, although Oklo isn't yet making any money at all. But Oklo says it's making progress towards its vision. We've heard that before. The company received approval in September to begin site investigations for one of its small reactors in Idaho, and it says it's reached several agreements to sell future power to data center operators. But so far, these small modular reactors are all theory. They are all theory. Doesn't matter if anyone on YouTube has shown you some amazing artificial intelligence video created by, I don't know, some sort of graphics processing system. They're all fake. These things don't exist yet at all. They have a long and expensive road ahead to actually generating and selling power, according to Squassoni. Other recent US efforts to build new nuclear reactors have been plagued by delays and massive cost overruns. The cost overruns we've seen in the UK recently are insane. We're looking at power plants that were meant to cost 15 billion, ended up costing well over 40 billion pounds. That's one nuclear power plant. Guys, that's like 55 billion US dollars. The Hinkley Power Station was much more expensive, but it did run over cost by about 400%, and it took 16 years when it was meant to take 8. The United States also faces hurdles to assessing sufficient fuel to power new reactors, after restrictions on imports of enriched uranium from Russia began in the wake of its war in Ukraine. The US government is combing through its own nuclear stockpile to find enough fuel for some projects, while fuel enrichment efforts get off the ground. In other words, the United States government is taking apart nuclear warheads to use the uranium from those. Gates's TerraPower broke ground in June, and on its nuclear reactor demonstration plant, Natrium, which it hopes will be operational, by 2030. Now, remember what I mentioned earlier in this video, that all that energy demand is needed now, not post 2030? Yeah. For now, construction at the site in Wyoming is limited to non-nuclear elements as it awaits full regulatory approval. TerraPower says its design is smaller and simpler than traditional nuclear reactors, and its system would use sodium for cooling rather than traditional water-cooled reactors. The Wyoming plant is being built near a retiring coal power plant and is set to provide power to Pacificorp, a utility company that has relied on the coal plant. Like Oklo's design, TerraPower's reactors will have passive safety mechanisms built in, the company claims. This means they're designed to automatically cool down if something goes wrong, enabling them to avoid the kinds of catastrophes associated with the industry like the 1986 Chernobyl accident. Gates has said he founded and invested more than $1 billion into TerraPower because he believes expanding nuclear energy generation is essential to combat climate change. This is a big step towards safe, abundant, zero carbon energy, Gates said at the Wyoming plant's groundbreaking ceremony in June. It's important for the future of this country that projects like this succeed. But TerraPower and other nuclear startups still have a long way to go in convincing the public that their next generation designs aren't just feasible, but they're actually safe. I mean, we don't even have a prototype that works as of now. The industry has been pushing for loosening regulations, speeding up processes, and the Trump administration undoubtedly will try to speed things up and reduce some regulations, Squassoni said, after Trump decided to cancel all wind power projects in the United States that the federal government has anything to do with anyway. Gates commented on nuclear safety concerns in a June interview with NPR, saying the company welcomes regulatory scrutiny. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission is the best in the world, and they'll question us and they'll challenge us. And, you know, that's fantastic, he said.